So I reread the I Jedi novel, Star Wars Legends I Jedi by Michael Stackpole, one of my favorite authors in expanded universe, Star Wars Legends. And right off the bat, I'd like to say that I really, really love this book. I read it before, I loved it since I first read it. And when I first picked it up, I had no idea truly what I was going to get into. So pretty much, I feel what's essential reading before this is definitely the X-wing series, because that's where we get to know Coran Horn as a character, about his past, and what he goes through in that X-wing series. Then I recommend, which I feel is essential as well, before even picking this book up, is the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson, because that trilogy is, how could I put it? And this is pretty much common knowledge if for expanded universe fans, Legends fans about this book that are familiar with it, whether you've read it or not. It's common knowledge pretty much that what happens in the Jedi Academy trilogy, the first half of this book is that, but with Coran Horn's perspective. So we get to spend more time with the students, because this whole book, the entire book, which is almost 600 pages, is from Coran Horn's perspective. So I had read the Jedi Academy trilogy and had no idea what this book was going to do and how it was going to contribute, which it truly does, in my opinion. So we get to spend more time with the students and the events that happen in that trilogy, specifically on Yavin 4, that part of that trilogy, because there is a lot involved in that trilogy and the plots branch out. But the main plot is Luke's establishment of the Jedi Order. And Coran Horn is or was a student there, and this is his perspective, and the events that happen are seen from his eyes in this entire book. Well, half of it, because half of it is when, a little bit more than half, I would say, is when he attended the Jedi Academy, and the other half I will get into in a second. But one, I wouldn't say criticism, but one thing that I felt that the Jedi Academy trilogy needed was, I felt that we really needed to spend more time. It would have been nice to spend more time with the students, with Luke's recruits, and a little bit more time on Yavin 4, because we do, but there's just a lot more going on with different other events and characters as well. It's not just about Luke's Jedi Academy, and we're not always on Yavin 4. So here, I do feel that we are rewarded, you can say, with more, because since it's first person perspective, this entire book, when Coran Horn, the part that, which is almost half, a little bit more than half, like I mentioned, when he's in attending Luke's Jedi Academy, he interacts with the students that we got familiar with in the Jedi Academy trilogy. And since it's his perspective, we get to spend more time with the other recruits, with the other students, and the events that happen. We see everything from his perspective. For example, what happened to Gantoris, which was awful. Coran Horn, as we know, he was a cop, and he's worked. He has a lot of extensive experience in investigations and undercover work and everything with Corsic. So right away, he was on it. He was even, if I remember correctly, criticizing Luke about his methods, and he wanted to get Coran Horn wanted to get to the bottom of it, investigating, which actually did help Luke out. So that's how he contributed with his experience, with his knowledge, and even being force sensitive, he wasn't as powerful as the other students, which he acknowledged here in this book, but he did have these awesome abilities like force projection and being able to I want to say manipulate, but well, yeah, being able to form images in people's heads that weren't really there. So that was one of his powers. And yeah, so many things to say about this book. I won't make this review too long, but I do really feel that this really contributed to the Jedi Academy trilogy. So this book, I've from my encounter with different individuals who have read it, some people really, really have a strong opinion about why they dislike this book. So either you hate it or you love it. That's pretty much the two. I haven't really met anybody who's kind of indifferent about it, which I'm sure there are people. But from my experience, either people really hate it or they they love it. And I really, really love this book. And I understand Corin Horn isn't the most popular character. I love Corin Horn. Um, I know, and this is part of who he is. He's full of himself. He thinks he can get any woman in existence. He has that, I don't know, not a chauvinist, but um, I don't know. I can tell, I can say this, that unless I see something otherwise, I haven't yet, but it seems like Michael Stackpole really, really loves Corin Horn. By reading this book, that was the impression afterwards. As soon as I closed it, I thought, wow, Michael Stackpole really loved or loves Corin Horn, because this book is completely dedicated to him, and he does have a way about him that throws people off, that turns people off. And I just think he's what I like about him, he's extremely assertive. I like the fact that he was a cop, that he was an X-Wing pilot afterwards, that contributed a lot to that storyline in X-Wing series. And he's force sensitive. He attends Luke's Jedi Academy. One of my favorite parts in this book is when he builds his own lightsaber, and it's a silver blade. And yeah, there's just a lot of really, really cool events in this book. So like I mentioned before, the first a little bit more than half of this book is Corin Horn's perspective of the events that happen in the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson. And everything that happens there on Yavin 4 is from his perspective, so we get in deeper in those events, which I absolutely loved. The reason why he goes to Yavin 4 is because as soon as the book opens up, pretty much his wife is missing, Mirax, and he freaks out. Obviously his wife's missing, so he doesn't know if she's kidnapped. He knows she's in trouble. So to be able to find her, he attends because he knows he's force sensitive, he attends the Jedi Academy. And there are criticisms of who would do that, if your wife's missing, you would actually spend time, because it's going to be months or maybe years at a Jedi Academy, and not right away go find his wife. That's a criticism. But what I like about that is that it's addressed here by his father-in-law, pretty much. And that fact is addressed, that it's kind of ridiculous. Like, how could you? But he has his reasons. And not only that, after he leaves the Jedi Academy, because there's a lot of things that, like what happened in Jedi Academy trilogy with Kip Duran, he is appalled by how Luke handled the situation afterwards when Kip Duran was pretty much redeemed. Corin Horn just couldn't believe it. So that's one of the reasons why he decided to leave. He didn't agree with Luke's methods, which sometimes I really feel bad for Luke, because it's not his. Even Gantoris, he called Luke out. And I don't know, like, we as Luke fans feel I felt bad for him, reading about, wow, these students are kind of rebelling or questioning him and everything, which they have a right to, but I don't know, that's something that I've always felt kind of bad about. But he disagreed, and he just decided to leave, and he goes to Booster, and they decide to have him go undercover with these pirates, because he was able to tell eventually where Mirax is at. So he needed to go undercover, which he does. He goes undercover. So that's what I like. It's the Jedi aspect of it, and then he goes back to his roots as an undercover cop, pretty much, even though he wasn't with Corsac anymore, but he used those skills once again and went undercover, deep undercover, and he goes and he even forms friendships. As it's like, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie with Johnny Depp called Donnie Brasco, based on a true story. And even though it's different, but it's sort of like that. Like Donnie Brasco, Johnny Depp's character, goes and infiltrates the mob, and he's an undercover cop, and he gets along with these evil people. So eventually, so he forms these sort of these friendships, especially with Al Pacino's character. But I mentioned Donnie Brasco because it reminded me when I was reading the second half again. This time I thought, wow, this reminds me of Donnie Brasco, that movie. Which, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's extremely cool. But yes, he utilized his skills as an undercover agent with Corsic and infiltrated these pirates. And I'm not going to give spoilers, but he, he succeeded. So, one thing that I really liked about this book, among many, was that he left Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy not in good terms. He was just, which was his right. He just wasn't agreeing with Luke's methods, but I think he was a little too harsh with Luke. I think Coran Horney, yes, he is full of himself and everything, but I just love his character, especially after reading this book. And then obviously in the NJO, New Jedi Order, he has this tremendous contribution or story arc too. So I love his character as well, and so he's just a great character for me. I really like him. But yeah, there's that aspect of it as far as the second half of the book. So I was saying that one of the things I like among many is that even though he did leave Luke's teachings, Luke Skywalker comes back. They help each other out. They kind of see eye to eye eventually, along with Uro. He comes out, and I like that he didn't just leave Luke and that's it. No, that came around. Luke came back, and while he was undercover, Coran Horn was undercover, and they made amends and helped each other out. So that was great, and I do like the finale. And this Moff, or ex Moff, she was something else. She was on a good one. Leonia Tavira, which we've read in the X-Wing comics, which I highly recommend. There's so much, all the connections as in the EU, which I love. But she appeared in the comics, so I really recommend that. It's not essential, but it's good to get familiar with that character. She is yeah, she's pretty much a nymphomaniac. I feel she's a yeah, she's a nympho, and yeah, she just yeah, yeah. So just I highly recommend reading it. It was a little out there, those parts, but some parts seem like you were gonna get into, and this is not to turn people off. This is Star Wars still. It's a very Star Wars book, but with that character specifically, evil character. Yeah, sometimes I was reading and I thought, wow, this is like sort of borderline erotica, but no, it's a great book, and the ending really paid off. Like I said, it is on the longer side, but you do fall deep into this book. Another thing I wanted to mention, and is it seems like this is two books in one, because there's a big contrast from the first half to the second half. I was really completely invested in that section in the first half when he's at the Jedi Academy. Then when he leaves, the tone I felt just completely shifted. Not in a negative way, not in a bad way, but it seemed like, wow, I feel like I'm reading a completely different book. Yes, there are two events, or two different scenarios, you can say. Jedi Academy, when he's training, utilizing his Jedi powers and being trained, and then leaving and going undercover. But yeah, the tone kind of shifted a little bit. But at the end, I think it was a great payoff. I liked Luke's involvement as well, And Elagos, I thought he was an awesome character, really really cool, and how much he helped Corin Horn as well. But highly recommend this book. Just keep in mind that it's a first person perspective, and you may like it, you may love it. I loved it, but I don't know. I would say it's in my top 10. Seriously, I like it that much. Top 10 in all legends. I just have fun with it. Love Corin Horn as a character. Love what the expanded universe Star Wars Legends did for him. So as far as how much he contributed in New Jedi Order as well, and this book, and then X-Wing series. So yes, Star Wars I Jedi, very cool book. Loved it.